Commissioner Garnes. We have Commissioner Ward represented by Lori Nazira. We have Irina Brosman representing Building Standards. We also have Commissioner Rabbit and Commissioner Wells. That's our 7-person in-person quorum.
Thank you. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we're going to do the roll call first so that we're absolutely assured that we have who is with us. Could staff please call the roll?
Chair Silva.
Here.
Vice Chair Rodriguez, represented by Sean Connolly.
Here.
Commissioner Portantino, represented by Astrid Kokoban. Commissioner Claire.
Here.
Commissioner De La Cruz. Commissioner Garnes.
Here.
Commissioner Ward, represented by Lori Nazira.
Here.
Commissioner Kim Lopez.
Here.
Representative Irina Brosman.
Here.
Commissioner McGowan.
Here.
Commissioner Miyamoto. Commissioner Rabbit. Commissioner Wells.
Here.
That completes the roll, Chair.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to the January 11th, 2024 meeting of the California Seismic Safety Commission. I want to thank you all for making the time to be here with us today. We have a lot of work to cover, and I also want to point out that it's important that 7 of us were in the room live and in person today. I apologize for not being able to be there, but I am participating in 2 meetings at the same time, and I'm on a panel discussion in about 45 minutes, so I will be called away, and at that point, I will be handing the chair to our executive director to facilitate the meeting in my absence. A lot has happened since we last met in October. A lot has happened in the last month. There's a lot of turmoil around the world, and some of it is seismic, in fact. As we all probably know, on December 18th, China had its strongest and most deadliest earthquake in the last 9 years in the northwestern province of China. 131 people have been declared dead. More than 700 people are injured, and 15,000 homes were damaged. And our best wishes go out to those in China. In addition, on January 1st, the new year started with a bang in Japan with a 7.6 earthquake that was felt there. Fortunately, it was not near a nuclear power plant. And so the damage is significant, but we are not looking at catastrophic nuclear fallout. 168 persons have been declared dead, 323 missing, and 565 were injured. 1,390 homes were damaged in Japan, and more than 30,000 people are in shelters and evacuation centers, and there have been more than 1,000 aftershocks of the Japanese earthquake. Most significantly, I think the government of Japan is considering doubling its budget reserves to $6.9 billion effectively to cover the cost of earthquake reconstruction. And so our hearts go out to those in Japan, and we truly appreciate what the Japanese government is looking at doing. Our colleague, Commissioner Miyamoto, is in fact in Japan. He may be able to call in a little later today, but we look forward to hearing his report on what has happened in a future meeting. The holidays were not just when we had 2 devastating earthquakes, but also there are some past earthquakes that we are commemorating or remembering. December 20th was the 1-year anniversary of the magnitude 6.4 earthquake that hit Rio Dell and Ferndale in Northern California. And most significantly, and we're going to talk about this a little later in our meeting today, 25% of their housing stock in Rio Dell was damaged. About 381 dwellings, that could have been 25% of the housing stock covered by that earthquake. But more significantly, those who live in mobile homes and manufactured homes were more significantly impacted. And we'll have an opportunity to discuss some opportunities to improve the resiliency of our mobile home and manufactured home housing stock in the state later today. Also on January 17th, which is next week, we will celebrate the 30th anniversary. We won't celebrate, we will commemorate the 30th anniversary of the Northgate earthquake. It was a 6.7 magnitude earthquake, and it has led to significant changes in our seismic safety and resiliency regulations in this state. The losses in that earthquake in California totaled nearly $50 billion, which is equivalent to about twice that in today's dollars. And about 82,000 residential and commercial buildings were damaged or destroyed in that earthquake, which is significant. And it's because it was in such an urban area. And of course, the Northgate earthquake in 1994 followed the late 1970s Northridge earthquake. We have a high school in Walnut Creek called Northgate, so you can imagine how I can combine the words earthquake and Northridge into Northgate. Last year, in February 6th, was the Turkey earthquake, magnitude 7.8 and 7.5. It affected 23 million people in Turkey and Syria. And our Commissioner Miyamoto was heavily involved in the after shock work that was going on there. And so all of that is to say that we are never, cold weather doesn't mean it's not earthquake weather, and that our job is never done. And so with that, I will say that thank you again for all being here today. And we have a lot of work to accomplish today, so thank you. The first item on the agenda which we've already called the meeting to order and taken the roll call, is to ask for public comment on items that are on the agenda today. We have a heavy agenda. If you wish to speak to an item that is on our agenda today, please either raise your hand if you were joining us in person in the room, or raise your hand remotely on Zoom to indicate that you would like to be brought into the meeting for public comment. Does anyone in the room wish to make public comment on items on the agenda at this time? I will admit that it's hard to see how the room and everyone individually in it. So Tanya or Executive Director Evertson, I will be relying on you to let me know. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak?
We have nobody in the room that would wish to speak at this time.
All right, thank you. And is there anyone who is joining us remotely who has raised their hand? I'm not seeing anyone in the participant. Let's see.
We have no one raising their hand virtually as well.
All right, thank you. Then I will close public comment on items on the agenda. There will be a portion of the meeting later where we will consider public comment on items not on the agenda. I will go to the next item on our agenda, which is the approval of our meeting minutes from October 12th, 2023. I will first ask if anyone has any questions or comments or corrections to make on those minutes. And I will note for the record that the Executive Director and I spoke yesterday about when former Commissioner Mia Marvelli was no longer a member of our commission. The minutes will be corrected to reflect that she was not a member of the commission on October 12th. 2023. Are there any other corrections or questions about our October 12th, 2023 meeting minutes? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes with the correction.
Approve the meeting minutes of October 12th, 2023 with the correction.
Do we have a second? Don't all jump in at once. Those of you in the room, you're going to have to. Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes as corrected of October 12th, 2023. Could you please take a roll call vote?
Chair Silva,
Aye.
Vice Chair Rodriguez, represented by Sean Connolly,
Aye.
Commissioner Portantino, represented by Astrid Hokoban, Commissioner Claire,
Aye.
Commissioner Garnes,
Aye.
Commissioner De La Cruz,
Aye.
Commissioner Ward, represented by Lori Nazara,
Aye.
Commissioner Kim Lopez,
Aye.
Commissioner Building Standards, represented by Irina Brosman,
Aye.
Commissioner McGowan,
Aye.
Commissioner Miyamoto, Commissioner Rabbit, Commissioner Wells.
Aye.
Vote passes unanimous.
Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is item number 5. I'm going to turn this over to our executive director to give us an update, and we're going to take action on the proposed Seismic Safety Commission strategic plan.
Thank you, Chair Silva. This is an item that we've been discussing for the last several meetings, and it is part of the ad hoc committee that was assigned to participate with us. The ad hoc committee consisted of Chair Silva and Commissioner Garnes. During this strategic planning process, we were updating the previously defunct strategic plan. We had done a mission and values statement a couple years ago, but had not completed more of a plan. So we got together, the staff reviewed previous work that had been done, and then provided a draft to the ad hoc committee. The ad hoc committee reviewed that draft, and then we met with the organizational performance unit within Cal OES to go over the plan and ensure it aligned with Cal OES's mission and vision. That initial draft was reviewed and discussed and refined, and we provided a mission, vision, and goal statements that were provided in your packet. So that was then reviewed and approved by Cal OES, and it is here for your review and approval. Should we choose to do so at a later date, we could add additional items to that draft plan, such as objectives and tactics. But at this time, it includes a vision, a mission, and goals. And I would open it back up to the chair and Commissioner Garnes if they'd like to make any comments about the process. Thank you.
Commissioner Garnes, do you have any comments to open us up?
I'm good. No, I think it was, I think the executive director said everything. Thank you.
And I would just say that I truly appreciated the work and the assistance of the staff from Cal OES in getting us to this point. Commissioner Rabbit and I were in the room when we were discussing our preliminary revisions about 5 years ago, and we were a bit all over the map, and we're now very targeted, and I think what we've proposed here aligns with the Cal OES mission and vision. And it also basically reflects our regulatory authority so that we are in compliance with state law, which is always a good thing. So other comments from commissioners or questions about the proposed vision, mission, and goals? I don't hear or see anyone who's raising their hands. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the draft.
I make a motion to approve the draft.
I'll second.
I think we have a motion from, was that Commissioner Garnes?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
a second from Commissioner Kim Lopez to approve the draft strategic plan, vision, mission, and goals. Can we please have a roll call vote?
Chair Silva,
Aye.
Vice Chair Rodriguez, represented by Sean Connolly,
Aye.
Commissioner Portantino, represented by Astrid Hokoban,
Aye.
Commissioner Claire,
Aye.
Commissioner Garnes,
Aye.
Commissioner De La Cruz,
Aye.
Commissioner Ward, represented by Lori Nazara.
Aye.
Commissioner Kim Lopez,
Aye.
Representative Irina Brosman,
Aye.
Commissioner McGowan.
Aye.
Commissioner Rabbit, Commissioner Wells.
Aye.
Item passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you again to both the staff from our commission as well as the Cal OES staff that helped basically drive this to a very fruitful conclusion. Next item on our agenda, item 6, is the proposal for a project to help us improve the resiliency of our mobile home and manufactured home housing stock in the state of California. And I'm going to turn it over to our executive director to give us an overview.
Thank you very much. We're excited to bring forward this project. I have up with me Wayne Connolly, our structural engineer, who will give us some more specific details about the project. But I just wanted to talk very briefly about why this project came to fruition and ask for your consideration at the end. So this project has to do with the understanding of seismic vulnerability of manufactured homes. And you'll see some slides here from various earthquakes that have happened. We do know that mobile homes are particularly vulnerable to sliding off their foundations, which can cause the uninhabitability of the actual homes of these residents. It can also cause fires, as you see down in the lower right-hand corner. So we do know that it is a major vulnerability within the state. There are hundreds of thousands of these. And there is currently code. HCD has code for this, but we have some concerns about that code, which is bringing about our request to do this project. You'll also see here on this slide that in Rio Del, while 1 in 5 buildings in general were damaged, which included wood-framed homes, 1 in 3 of the mobile homes sustained damage. So what we would like to do is look at the 3 systems that are currently available in California to reduce the vulnerability of lateral loads. Again, I mentioned that HCD has the authority, and within that authority under the Health and Safety Code, they work in collaboration with us to guarantee buyers of manufactured homes and mobile homes that they're provided with earthquake-resistant bracing systems that adhere to widely acceptable or accepted seismic safety standards. So we'll talk a little bit about what that means coming up here. So what was great about this opportunity was that we've been working for a number of months behind the scenes, talking to experts in the field, specific engineers that are known for their expertise in mobile homes, and came to these conclusions. And then there's a possibility of receiving or at least applying for a BRIC grant. So we'll talk about that in a few moments. So I will turn it over to Ja to let her talk about the 3 specific systems and the vulnerabilities that were identified, or deficiencies that were identified to help us with the vulnerability of mobile homes. Thank you.
Good morning, commissioners. So the 3 systems that Andy just talked about, the first one that is engineered tie down. As you can see, the issue we identified is the Title 24. The regulation requires the tie down to provide for a wind load for 15 pounds per square foot, or the designed wind load based on the location of the unit, whichever is greater. But it is silent on the seismic issue, because the assumption is that the system designed for the 15 pounds, the wind load, will provide a sufficient earthquake protection. However, as over the years that the seismic hazard and risk has been understood more and more by the science community and the engineering community, a lot due to the effort by USGS, CGS, and also the FEMA and an organization like ATC to better quantify the risk. So it is justifiable to still to evaluate if the 15 pounds per square foot represents our current understanding of acceptable seismic safety standard, like Andy just mentioned in the health and safety code. And then second is the foundation system. In the regulation is specifically mentioned that the foundation system for the manufactured housing units should be designed to withstand the vertical and lateral loads due to dead load, roof, and floor live load, wind, and seismic load in accordance with the provision of the California Residential Code and local soil condition. However, even though seismic code is mentioned here, to successfully apply for the California residential load, you need a suite of factors. Seismic design coefficient works with those lateral systems that they use to support a manufactured home. However, the residential code doesn't have those parameters that can work with those systems. So that's one of the gap that we identified that need further investigation. And then the last is the earthquake resistant bracing system. The regulation reference that designed and constructed in accordance with the Uniform Building Code 1982 edition. As you know, this is outdated, but then even they update this to reference the current CRC, for example, is still that a critical gap is missing how to identify the seismic design parameters that can provide sufficient acceptable seismic safety based on quantified data. So that's the three gap that we identified.
Thank you, Ja. So our project proposal here is to allow the Seismic Safety Commission to apply for the FEMA Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Building Code Plus Up grant for $300,000. That requires a local match, but the local match should be covered by our in-kind staff time. For that proposal, we are considering the evaluation of the current code provisions and their effectiveness to meet the generally accepted seismic safety standards. And within the project, we will be developing and conducting a testing program, analyzing the data, recommending code improvements, helping to understand the benefit and cost of code changes, and engaging the public on the findings and changes to codes and regulations as appropriate. We have also been in contact with HCD, who is in support of working with us on this project and would be one of our stakeholders. Next slide, please. So just a little information on next steps. Again, the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Community, or BRIC, Building Code Plus Up grant, that's a mouthful, is new to 2023. FEMA put it out to further demonstrate the importance of building codes, and they set aside an additional $2 million per state and territory for this specific purpose. We would be finalizing our grant application. It is due on the 19th of this month. If the commission approves, we will submit it at that time. During the selection process, they do a typical initial determination for the grant by the end of August to decide whether the grants that have been submitted were identified for further review or not selected. BRIC grants have a 3-year estimated timeline. At this point in time, we have projected it would take 3 years, although I think it could probably be done a little bit sooner than that, but with code development, it may take that long. The last 6 months of any grant is really done for closeout purposes, both on the subgrantee side and Cal OES's side. Next slide, please. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. As I said before, I think this is very important that we are able to do this, given that mobile homes and manufactured homes are a significant portion of our affordable housing stock in the state. And so from an equity perspective alone, this is very important besides the safety issues involved. Any questions from commissioners before we go to comments?
Yes, we have Commissioner Claire and Commissioner Rabbit in person.
So,
Commissioner, how about you go first?
Yes, Commissioner Claire, thank you. With regard to the brick grants, I know that you had mentioned that this is new component of brick grants because they're very difficult to get. We've applied for some and have fallen short. Do we have like a plan B, or if this grant doesn't come through, are we still exploring other methods to, while we got this submitted, to see if there's something that can supplement? That's a great question. Thank you. I'm unfamiliar with any other opportunities that would provide funding. If this is something that the commission feels strongly about, there is money available in the craft fund, and we could start looking at that process if that's what the commission is interested in. I do know that we have never applied here with the commission for a brick grant. I've had some success in my previous, that doesn't mean that I'm going to have success here. But we've been working hard and in close concert with them. This is also a new program that they're very interested in, and I know there hasn't been a lot of take up yet. And so I think our chances are better than potentially not. Again, can't guarantee anything. But if the commission is strongly interested in continuing with this project and we aren't awarded a grant, we would have an opportunity, I think, to consider using some of our craft money to do so.
Commissioner Rabbit? And could you speak into the microphone because we can't hear you actually out here?
Yep, we're trying to get the microphone settled. Certainly, I'm in favor of applying for the grant, and we're undoubtedly behind in looking at the structural integrity of mobile homes and manufactured homes. I guess my question goes to, as I was first, would we concentrate on the actual construction of the unit itself in the factory? And then how is that, once it gets on the site, because my understanding, and we're dealing with lots of mobile home issues in our county, the property is owned by the property owner, basically a pad for a mobile unit to be applied. So where does the responsibility lie on a tie down system? I mean, having a shear wall disconnected to the ground is not going to be worthwhile. So how does that actually, the loads actually transmit to the ground, and how do we look at that, and what are we going to concentrate on?
That's a great question. So we want to clarify, yes, our focus is not the unit itself. That's fall under the jurisdiction of HUD with an HCD. So our those code provision that give us the require CD to collaborate with us are the tie down part, the tie down foundation system, and then the distinction that Commissioner you mentioned are there. When the mobile home get on site, that they are built like a conventional stick frame, then they have a permanent foundation. But those are not the issue that we are looking at. We're more looking at the ones that with the piers, and then or with the straps, those kind of engineered tie down system. So those are they are a system that pre-approved by the state, but then due to those gaps that we identified, those will be the focus of this study.
I would just, and how that gets implemented, I think, is vitally important, because I can guarantee you those that own the mobile homes, living in the mobile homes, are not going to be able to afford to do anything, and it's really going to be the park owners. And it, as the chair mentioned, the mobile home parks have become the de facto private sector affordable housing units, and there's lots of contentious issues surrounding those things right now. So as we go through that, I just want to make sure that we understand the political pratfalls of trying to push that forward and who ultimately is going to be responsible for it. I think it's going to be important. Thank you.
Commissioner Kim Lopez, you have a question.
Yes, I think it's more of a comment on this one for the brick grant, and I've had experience applying for it, and we were fortunately successful, but we also learned a lot about what they're looking for. And I think it'd be helpful with the power of the elected officials that serve on this commission to really give an extra push into making sure that we get the funding through BRIC. And in the worst case scenario, if we don't get the grant, I think it's also indicative of the fact that this is exactly the thing that we should be getting funding for. So I think it provides a basis for us to engage at that level of, if you're not funding through funding programs such as this and efforts such as this, how can we maybe weigh in on modifying the accessibility of those funds for these types of work? That's it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? I had a couple. Executive Director, so just to confirm, the $300,000 grant application, we would fund our matching from staff time, not outside consulting services.
That is correct.
And when you mentioned early on that every state gets $2 million, I think of Wyoming and I think, well, they don't have a lot of people. Who are they protecting and what is this really targeted for? Do you think Wyoming would be willing to give us some of their money? No, I'm just kidding. But it does raise the issue of the magnitude and scope of the issue. I hope the questions in the application really ask for information on that so that we can point out that California has a serious issue around this housing stock, and this would really prove to help hundreds of thousands of people who are living in these homes.
Yes, Commissioner, that has been addressed in the grant application.
Right.
We are working on the draft, obviously, behind the scenes in case it is approved, because it is due in short order here. So in our text, we have addressed that issue. And if I may just address Commissioner Rabbit's initial comment there as well. This issue was brought to my attention years ago when I was the managing director of the Earthquake Brace Bolt program. It was of interest to us at that time because we were looking to potentially establish a program for grants to mobile homeowners to retrofit their properties. At that time, it was determined that there was concerns around the code, and without a sufficient code, we didn't want to put together a grant program. So I know that CEA has had a strong interest in doing a mobile home grant program to help homeowners do this, assuming that the code is sufficient.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to direct staff to submit the application to FEMA.
Chair, we have two commissioners, Commissioner Garnes and Representative Irene Brosman, that have questions, comments.
Commissioner Garnes?
Yes, thank you. Mine is a comment. As you know, firsthand, I know about the mobile home issue, so I fully support this idea. I think that Commissioner Rabbit is on target as far as dealing with owners of the property, because that's going to be really important. The owners of the mobile homes are going to be very hard pressed to be able to come up with the funds to do that. And also that as an elected, I am willing to push anybody, and I have a big mouth when I need one. So I'm happy to be involved in that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Wells?
So yeah, it's again kind of comment and about terminology, because I'm not familiar with this grant at all. I can admit that, but the name is building codes, and strictly speaking, standards about manufactured homes, they are not considered building standards, at least in California, by California law. So hopefully that will not affect like the application and the decision on the FEMA side. So, because Title 24, it's not part of the building code.
Commissioner,
25.
thank you for the distinction. Yeah, this we have talked to the grant, besides Title 24, they also said that some other codes, like green codes, are also eligible. So what we are trying to tackle is Title 25. So they deem as equivalent within the scope of eligible activity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? A motion?
So moved, Rabbit.
Second, Garnes.
We have a motion and a second to direct staff to complete and submit the application to FEMA. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Chair Silva, Vice Chair Rodriguez, represented by Sean Connolly,
Aye.
Commissioner Portantino, represented by Astrid Kokobut,
Aye.
Commissioner Claire,
Aye.
Commissioner Garnes,
Aye.
Commissioner De La Cruz,
Aye.
Commissioner Ward, represented by Lori Nazara,
Aye.
Commissioner Kim Lopez,
Aye.
Representative Irina Brosman,
Aye.
Commissioner McGowan,
Aye.
Commissioner Rabbit, Commissioner Wells.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you so much, everyone. We're now going to the next item on our agenda, item 7, which are the 2023 Seismic Safety Commission reports. And before I turn it over to our executive director, I'm going to mention that it is now time for me to leave for the other meeting I'm participating in, and I will be back probably within an hour. If all is well, you'll all be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Silva. All right, moving on to the Seismic Safety Commission reports. We will be giving 2 reports today. I will be speaking to the annual report, and Tanya Black will be speaking to the Attorney General report. So I will start with the annual report. The annual report was provided in your packet. Can you all hear me, or do I need to get closer? I feel like I'm good. All right. We had statutory authority it speaks to in the report, and then it provides a financial summary. That financial summary speaks to the revenue that we receive through an assessment through the Department of Insurance, the general fund money that is allocated that basically keeps our lights on and gives us accounting and legal support, the CPUC commission money, which is money for the particular project that we speak to for the independent peer review panel, and then the CRAFT fund, or the California Research and Assistance Fund, which was a gift fund that is still in place. That has an allocation of $700,000 per year. So that's the status there. The report then goes on to speak about a couple different projects that we have. The 2 projects there, the review of the delays of the San Francisco Public Utilities Water System Improvement Program, and then the independent peer review panel for Diablo Canyon. So there's brief specificity within the report. And then it speaks to the several AB 100 reports. I believe we had 6 of them last year that you all listened to, including the California Energy Commission, the CPUC, the Division of State Architect, Department of Water Resources, Department of Education, and the Office of Public School Construction. It also speaks to the project that we have ongoing with UCSD, University of California, San Diego, for the earthquake fire following test that is being done on the mid-rise cold form steel buildings. That's our shake table test that we often speak to. This project has been ongoing, although it hasn't technically started yet, but is mentioned. And then we briefly mention our website update. So that is the content of the plan. I'm sorry, of the report. So for further information, the CRAFT fund has $2.9 million in the bank at the moment. We actually did not complete any projects in 2023. And I mentioned the contract for the shake table. The total funds for that is just under $500,000. And the initiated contracts, which actually aren't mentioned in the plan, but I wanted to put here so that you understand the status of our CRAFT fund. The initiated contracts we had this last year for the INCOR project and the PEER project, which are both part of our Ferndale Turkey report, and then the Quake Heroes project, which is the viewing of the Quake Heroes movie for socially vulnerable communities, adds another 177. $1,000. So we're right in at about 2.23 or so million dollars that's still available after those projects are completed in the craft fund. So that is the end of the review of the annual report. Does commissioners have any comments? In the room? Commissioner Nazara?
Quick question, if you can go back one slide to the initiated contracts. So the 177 doesn't represent the sum total of those three. Is it because they're in stages or phases?
No, that would be an accounting error on the slide.
Ah, okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. Any other questions in the room? Any questions for commissioners online? Seeing none. We will move on to a vote on this particular item. So the request is to vote to allow staff to make any unsubstantiated unsubstantive commission edits if you have any, and then to finalize the report.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Garnes first, Rabbit second. Can we have a roll call on? Oh, there you are. I'm looking for a person.
Vice Chair Rodriguez, represented by Sean Connolly.
Aye.
Commissioner Portantino, represented by Astrid Hokoban.
Aye.
Commissioner Claire.
Aye.
Commissioner Garnes.
Aye.
Commissioner De La Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Ward, represented by Lori Nazara.
Aye.
Commissioner Kim Lopez.
Aye.
Representative Irina Brosman.
Aye.
Commissioner McGowan.
Aye.
Commissioner Rabbit. Commissioner Wells.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 8. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. We haven't done the AG report, which is not item 8. It's still item 7. So my apologies. Tanya Black will be speaking about the AG report.
Hi, Tanya Black, Administrative Processes Manager. I believe that Director had gone over what the Attorney General report is for this year. I'll just give you a little bit of history. In 2007, the SSC was gifted a $6 million money for research and projects related to earthquake risk reduction. We call that the California Research Assistance Fund or the Special Deposit Fund. The funding mechanism requires that the SSC submit an annual report to the AG's office detailing the activities and programs conducted with the funds during that year, in addition to the financial summary. 2003, we didn't have any projects that we completed, but as stated previously, we initiated the contracts that we have. We amended the UCD shake table to include the UAV technology, which we added funds to that contract. And then we also initiated those 3 contracts listed there that she had spoke about previously. So we added that to our report, but I also want to mention that on the report, we have the balance of the fund as of October 13th of 2023 at about 2.9 million. I will update the letter to include the balance as of December 31st of 2023 once that report is given to me. So it will differ in that we'll have a little more additional funding, because we'll have incurred some interest. So not bad. But that's the, completing of my report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Tanya, and my apologies for reading off some of your slides. All right, next slide, please. Do we have comments on the AG report? No comments. All right, so we will call for a motion to authorize the staff to make any commission edits and finalize the AG report. Is there a second? Commissioner Rabbit for a first and Commissioner Claire for a second. Thank you so much. We call for a vote.
Vice Chair Rodriguez, represented by Sean Connolly.
Aye.
Commissioner Portantino, represented by Astra Kokoban.
Aye.
Commissioner Claire. Aye. Commissioner Garnes.
Aye.
Commissioner De La Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Ward, represented by Lori Nazura.
Aye.
Commissioner Kim Lopez.
Aye.
Representative Irina Brosman.
Aye.
Commissioner McGowan. Commissioner Rabbit. Commissioner Wells.
Aye.
Vote passes unanimously.
Thank you. So we're scheduled to take a break at 10:45. We're quite a bit ahead of schedule. So my recommendation is that we allow Ryan Kirsting to present and take a break following. I'm getting a lot of nods. Yes. So is he online? Is Ryan? Okay, he's not here. He's not going to be here till 10 o'clock. So I guess we will take a break now. 15-minute break. We will see you back here in 15 minutes. Thank you.
For commissioners online, we'll be starting in about 1 minute. Thank you. If you'll put your cameras back on. Appreciate it.
This is Diane Gould. It says I can't start my camera because the host has stopped it. There you go. Thanks.
All right, thank you. We'll be calling the meeting back to order. We are ahead of schedule, and our presenter, Ryan Kirsting, has yet to arrive. He wasn't anticipated to start until 10:45. So we're juggling our schedule a little bit. And we will be hearing from Jeremy Lancaster, our recently appointed state geologist. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here. And we look forward to hearing from you. And at the end of the presentation, we will have opportunity for commission comments. And I know that Jeremy has a lot of slides, and we had shortened his time a little bit, but you have sufficient time here, so don't feel like you need to be too speedy. We do appreciate your flexibility, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you, Andy. All right, we'll just advance one slide here. So thank you, Chair Silva and commissioners. I appreciate the time on the schedule today. Name's Jeremy Lancaster. I'm the recently appointed state geologist with the California Geological Survey. I was appointed in October of 2023, so I've been in this position for 4 months. A little bit about me. I've been a practicing engineering geologist for 24 years. I'm a licensed professional geologist and a certified engineering geologist. I've been with the survey for 17 years. I've worked in the seismic hazards program for about 10 of those years, performing essential facilities reviews for schools and hospitals. So that's reviewing the geologic and seismological hazards for new construction and additions at schools and hospitals throughout California. I've zoned faults. I've responded to earthquake events, so the Napa earthquake, the 2014 Napa earthquake, the 2019 Ridgecrest earthquake. I've responded to landslides, tsunamis, wildfires, post-wildfire debris flows, including the Montecito disaster in 2018. I've been in the field. I've been a technical person, boots on the ground in the field. I've managed people from the field, and I've also managed teams from Sacramento, from the State Operations Center as well. The purpose of this presentation is really to get to know you all, but also to provide an update on activities of the California Geological Survey in 2023, our accomplishments of 2023. I thought this would be helpful for you all. I'm going to forward one here. So the California Geological Survey is an applied science organization. Our mission is to provide scientific products and services about the state's geology, seismology, forests and watersheds, mineral resources, and their related hazards that could affect the health, safety, and business interests of the people of California. We're one of the oldest state agencies. We've been around since 1850. Joseph Trask was the first state geologist. We produce more products and services to more people than any other state geological survey. Obviously, we are the most diverse state in terms of geology. We're the second most seismically active state in the union, as you probably all know. We are #1 in seismic risk, incurring about $4 billion in annualized losses, a little less than $4 billion in annualized losses. That's a little bit of background. Forward one, please. So I'm going to talk about our seismic hazards activities, and to do that, I'm going to give you some context first. We have 2 principal seismic hazards programs led by Tim Dawson. He's our seismic hazards program chief. That program is primarily responsible for mapping I've got to slow down a little bit here. And Hamid Haddadi is the program chief for earthquake engineering, AKA the California Strong Motion Instrumentation Program. We are hiring a branch chief to manage these two programs. I cannot tell you this person's name, but she is an amazing scientist and an amazing communicator. So look forward to having her on board, and she'll be starting in February. And I look forward to getting her over here at Cal OES and getting her working with the Seismic Safety Commission as well. Forward one, please. Okay, we're going to go into the Strong Motion Instrumentation Program. One more. So the Strong Motion Instrumentation Program has 36 staff. There's 4 primary functions: field operations, data products, structure response and data utilization, and ground response. We've hired several new staff this year, but that's just a little bit of background on the program. The program operates, the CGS operates 1,380 strong motion stations throughout the state. These are in the ground, so what we call free field stations. They are in structures, they are in lifelines, and we also have geotechnical arrays. We operate a very robust seismic system in the state. In over 260 buildings, 80 bridges, and 25 dams. We have 124 sensors in the Golden Gate Bridge, for example. We've instrumented 83 hospital buildings within the state. 64 of those have co-located free field stations. Sorry, next slide, please. And then we communicate our data through the Center for Engineering Strong Motion data and the California Integrated Seismic Network. And these are partnerships where we are ingesting data from other partners, so the USGS, and then with the CISN, we have a variety of partners here: Cal OES, USGS, Berkeley Seismic Lab, and Caltech. One of the primary products that we support is the development of shake maps after earthquakes. As you probably know, these are sent out to emergency services folks and emergency managers. These provide an understanding of the general distribution of ground shaking, shaking intensity. They can be used as a proxy for earthquake damage, and they're very important for understanding where to position resources after an earthquake event. Okay, next slide. So highlights for the strong motion. You can go, I'm sorry, I got you behind here. Go 2 more. 1 more. Sorry, I'm sorry, I did not keep you caught up. 1 more, please. So sorry to you all that that was my fault for not telling her that I was moving forward. All right. This is what you need to hear, though, is highlights for the CGS Strong Motion Instrumentation Program 2023 highlights. Forward 1. Okay, so we maintained, the Strong Motion Instrumentation Program maintained communication and evaluated the state of health for 1,300, all those 1,380 stations. That's our field ops group. We communicate with our stations, and we have a standard way of identifying whether or not there is a malfunction, which would trigger sending out maintenance forces to fix the situation. We upgraded 142 seismic stations as part of our statewide strong motion instrumentation upgrade to real time. Performed maintenance on 272 stations, those mostly associated with the California Earthquake Early Warning System. We instrumented 2 hospital buildings under contract with HCI, Healthcare Access Information. We instrumented the Lower Crystal Springs Dam and installed 4 new free field stations in the state. Okay, next slide. For the Earthquake Early Warning Project, we upgraded 32 stations. Again, we maintained 272 stations to support the California Earthquake Early Warning System. We also updated 80 ground stations to real time, and we have 370 stations now reporting in real time. And the other remainder are some are analog still that we continue to upgrade. We will continue to upgrade over the next 4 years. Next slide, please. Okay. California experienced 377 earthquakes. The map on the left there depicts the peak ground acceleration, the highest peak ground acceleration recorded at each seismic station throughout the state. The middle map depicts the cumulative shaking or cumulative shake map for 141 earthquakes in California. These are earthquakes with a magnitude greater than 3.5. You can see on that map, there's 6 magnitude 5s, luckily no magnitude 6s on there. And if you squint and compare to the map on the right, which is a cumulative shaking map for the last 40 years, there are really no surprises. The larger earthquakes that we saw in 2023 kind of mirror what we've seen in the last 40 years. Okay, next slide, please. The data utilization and structural response team re-instrumented 72 buildings. Outside of contracts with HCI, we also instrumented 10 hospitals. We instrumented 12 high-rise buildings. We awarded 4 new data interpretation projects. We have 10 other data interpretation projects ongoing for ground response, lifelines, and structures. In October 2023, we held our Strong Motion Instrumentation Program conference. We had 211 participants and from 14 different countries. Okay, next slide, please. We are evaluating low cost, lower resolution instrumentation in the state right now. These are MEMS-based sensors. We are co-locating them with our free field stations. So we have 5 in Southern California, 5 in Northern California, really to test the accuracy and the quality of the data that's produced against our high resolution strong motion instruments. We also partnered with the USGS to instrument the One Rincon Tower in San Francisco with co-located low resolution, low cost community seismic network type instruments with our high resolution, high cost instruments. And again, the purpose there is to evaluate the accuracy and the quality of the data to determine if we can go down the road of reducing our instrumentation costs over time. Okay, next slide. Okay, on to the seismic hazards program. So this is Tim Dawson's program. I'll give you a little bit of background. There's 6 primary functions within that program. They prepare, again, I said most of the work is mapping related. They prepare earthquake hazard maps, so like probabilistic earthquake hazard maps, fault rupture zones, landslide zones, liquefaction zones, tsunami hazard maps and models. And then they perform essential facilities reviews. So that's the geologic and seismological hazard review for new construction at schools and hospitals throughout the state. Okay, next slide. I think it's probably obvious to the commission here, but the earthquake zones of required investigation maps that we prepare are critical for local land use planning efforts. If we map earthquake fault zones, liquefaction zones, landslide zones, we provide those maps. They become they are adopted by the State Mining and Geology Board. They become a regulatory product, and if you are building within one of those zones, you are required to prepare a geological report for fault rupture or a geotechnical report for liquefaction and landslides. Okay, next slide, please. This is a composite map of zones in the Hayward area. This is through the lens of our EQ, it's called the EQ Zap that we have online. So it's an application where you can go in, you can search by address or by parcel, and it'll tell you if your area of interest, your parcel of interest is in an earthquake hazard zone. So the map that you're seeing on the screen, the yellow area with the black line through it is an earthquake fault zone for the Hayward Fault. The green areas are liquefaction zones. The blue are earthquake-induced landslide zones. And then the various different shades on the map are where we have overlapping zones. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, we celebrated last year 50 years of essential facilities review, reviewing hospital, new construction for hospital sites. So to commemorate this, we developed an online story map. I provided a link on the page there that you can go to that really kind of speaks to the value of the work that the team does. A little bit more on that. One more slide, please. We completed 475 reviews for new construction on school sites. So again, these are evaluating the engineering, geologic, and seismologic hazards for new construction and ensuring that they are adequately addressed in geotechnical and geologic reports. 22 hospitals, 754 technical letters were sent out last year. Okay, next slide, please. The Essential Facilities Review Unit for schools has completed 7,900 reviews since our inception decades ago. The Hospital Review Unit has completed more than 2,700 reviews for new construction at hospital sites. I've placed links here. We've got dashboards online. You can go to them on your own time. Next slide, please. Okay. The tsunami program completed offshore tsunamigenic landslide inventories for the entire coastal area. We inventoried more than 850 landslides that could trigger local tsunamis and impact coastal communities in California. We're developing in-house numerical tsunami modeling capability as well. We worked with our partners at Cal OES to update the local tsunami evacuation plans, the playbooks for all 20 coastal counties in California. We participate in many leadership organizations. Next slide, please. The Earthquake Fault Zoning Unit completed remapping the Rogers Creek Fault Zone. So that's from Sears Point to Santa Rosa. We had new data, new geologic and geotechnical data and LIDAR to reevaluate this fault zone. This is really more or less the northward extension of the Hayward Zone across the bay. These maps are complete. They've gone through, we have a 6-month, it's really a 6-month public review process. And they will be put on our web here on February 22nd. We are also working on a special report for the 2019 Ridgecrest earthquake, where we've mapped all of the surface rupture. And we will be, that report's going through ADA compliance right now and will be put on our web here in the next month. We plan to zone those faults as the next iteration of that data. Okay, one more slide. The seismic hazard zoning team completed liquefaction and landslide zoning for 6 quadrangles in Contra Costa County. The map there on the screen depicts the completed areas. So those are the red stippled areas that are bounded by a highlighted red rectangle. So let me just say, those will also be published on our web on February 22nd. They go through the same public review process. And then the team is working on the other 7 quadrangles that are in that map for Contra Costa County. And those will be published this year. So I'll be talking more about those later. Okay, next slide, please. We do a lot of outreach. We participate with Cal OES and Outreach, Shakeout, League of Cities, California Science Teachers Conference, the State Scientist Day. We do a lot of outreach to public schools. I just wanted to highlight this because it is one of our primary functions. We need to communicate what we do. The person in the middle of the slide, I just wanted to recognize, that's Cindy Pridmore. If you don't know Cindy Pridmore, she worked for CGS for 35 years. She was our outreach coordinator for the last 20 years, and she was quite the road warrior, an amazing geoscientist, extremely dedicated public servant. So I just wanted to recognize her on this slide because no outreach slide is complete without her. She retired December, and so we're going to miss her. We're going to have to backfill her position. All right, next slide. Actually, we'll go 2 slides. Skip that last one. All right, our vision for the survey, we envision a future in which geoscience information fully informs policy decisions, rural and urban planning, resource development, and infrastructure investments at the state, county, and local levels to ensure the safety and prosperity of all Californians. That is our vision. That is my vision. We've developed a strategic plan. I am going to be initiating this strategic plan over the next 3 years with these primary initiatives that you see on the screen. Those are keeping Californians safe. So with the earthquake engineering focus, really continuing to support California's earthquake early warning, moving into the realm of structural monitoring, structural health monitoring, so that we can perhaps assure return to service of structures. And that supports resilience after community resilience after earthquakes. Internally, I put this on the slide, but we've really got to increase our partnership with Cal OES, and that is the mandate that I've placed on our program leads. We are Cal OES's partner in everything geohazards, and if we can increase our technical support, that I think helps Cal OES with their deployment of effective emergency management, and that makes communities more resilient. That makes California better. So that's another focus. Advancing geoscience tools, so things like predictive models for debris flows, landslides, products for climate change adaptation is another initiative. So with the governor's goal of reaching carbon neutrality by 2045, we're standing up a geologic carbon sequestration group within the CGS, and then ensuring that we have a dynamic organization. Lastly, I'll just say one more thing, is that we can't achieve this vision of fully informing policy, rural and urban planning, and all of these other things without communicating our success, communicating our science. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here today, is because we're going to be forward leaning on the communication side. So I thank you for your time today. Sorry that I didn't keep you up to date on advancing the slides, but hopefully you got it all. I'll take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the overview and glad you didn't have to speed along too much. Are there any questions from commissioners in the room?
Thank you so much. And we're so glad that you're in this position. And when you showed your outreach slides, and Cindy there front and center, we too will miss her greatly. She was the first person really that helped us externally, helped us with our seismic hazard duty officer program. And Cindy herself was the duty officer for CGS for quite a long while. And that meant for her 24/7, 365. And for some reason, the earthquakes like to happen like at 2 a.m. or, in ungodly hours. So we certainly appreciated not only Cindy's work, but the fact that her leadership allowed her to do that. And when we look at your leadership, we're just so excited about the ways that we can work together in response. We know that should a catastrophic earthquake occur, that you'll be there right alongside my seismic hazards folks in the State Operations Center. And that's much appreciated. So I just wanted to say that I think there's a lot of work, and with the health monitoring of buildings, there's incredible potential benefit to our earthquake early warning program and the potential for getting more vendors on board with it so that we can all realize the goal of earthquake early warning being ubiquitous in all facilities, all buildings across the state. So that's one area that we're leaning very heavily on CGS for. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lori.
Yes, sir. Oh, sorry, you need this.
Well, first off, thank you for your work. Very much appreciated. And thank you for updating the Rogers Creek. I represent Sonoma County. I'm the supervisor there, so very much appreciate the update of the Rogers Creek fault line. Also, you made mention of the Golden Gate Bridge seismic sensors. I've been on the bridge board for about 13 years and very much appreciate that work. And to let everyone know, we are advancing the seismic upgrade, the last phase of the seismic upgrade of the main span of the bridge, which is about a it'll probably end up being about $1 billion project once we get underway. But we were fortunate this last year through the infrastructure bill to get a large bridge award of $400 million, thanks to Nancy Pelosi. So just wanted to say thank you for all your work, and look forward to continuing that work together.
Appreciate them.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for commissioners online? Seeing none, we will move back to our previous agenda item, and we'd like to thank you again so much for coming and sharing with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
So as we get set up, we'd like to welcome you, Ryan Kirsting. Thank you for joining us today. He's going to provide a building code and other updates. We unfortunately had to cut him very short at our last commission meeting, so we've invited him back to share more information with us, and we appreciate you being here today. We are running a little bit early, so we thank you for your flexibility and being willing to jump right in here. Welcome and thank you.
I'm so sorry, I'm unable to hear. I don't know if anyone else online.
Oh, how about now?
Yes, thank you.
It's better? So I need to speak a little more into it? Okay. I'm Ryan Kirsting. I'm a principal at Bueller Engineering. I'm a structural engineer here in Sacramento. I'm co-chair of the SEOC Legislative Committee. That's the Structural Engineers Association of California. I'm also president currently of the National Council of Structural Engineers Association, and I am chair of the Function Recovery Task Committee working with FEMA on developing updated seismic design provisions for dealing with functional recovery as a supplement and an enhancement compared to our current safety-based design provisions. So while I'm mentioning those 2 or 3 organizations, really the work that I'm representing today is a collaboration amongst many organizations, many of them at the federal level. Thank you. I'll keep trying to remember to say next slide. Many of them at the federal level. FEMA is very involved in this. FEMA is very much a sponsor of a lot of these activities under their NEHRP program. Next slide. Where did we come from? How did we get here? You might remember some of this for those of you who were in July meeting when I came. This came up as a topic in California probably about 5 years ago when Assemblymember Adrian Nazarian introduced some bills through the Assembly looking to develop functional recovery design standards. He did that in conjunction with Dr. Lucy Jones, retired from the USGS. But really that's more the policy side of the development over the last 5 years. The technical side of the development has really been going on for about the last 20 to 25 years, back into the early 2000s, if not the late 1990s. And when I talk about functional recovery, I want to make sure we're all understanding what we're talking about. So next slide, please. Functional recovery is considered a post-event performance state in which a building is maintained or restored to support the basic intended functions associated with its pre-event use. So instead of just being safety-based about being able to get out of the building safely, we're looking at being able to recover and support basic intended functions in some amount of time after an earthquake. So our objective for functional recovery would be to achieve that functional recovery state within that acceptable amount of time, where that time might differ for different types of buildings. Functional recovery means that buildings are designed to recover when our communities need those services. So some buildings and occupancies are needed very quickly in the recovery milestone, and maybe emergency services. Others might take longer, and we could allow them to recover longer, maybe weeks or months on the time frame for something that maybe is considered more of an amenity, a nice to have, but not a need to have service. So what it doesn't mean is that every building is being designed for immediate recovery. So it's not like we're designing everything to be a hospital, but we are designing things to be thoughtful about the time frame that it would take to recover. Next slide. Thank you. A lot of this work is based off of the FEMA work that started in the late 1990s, early 2000s. So a significant investment of time and resources from FEMA and a number of research agencies, including a lot of universities doing work in this area, to develop what we called next generation performance-based seismic design. Next generation, we're talking about originally in building codes, all we could think about was safety. And we could provide a different level of safety, prevention against collapse based on using certain design criteria, but we could really just measure safety, prevention of collapse. And so now with these methodologies that FEMA has developed, we can now quantify the estimated repair cost, the estimated repair and recovery time, as well as the carbon impact, the environmental impact of the damage and the repair that is necessary following an earthquake. Next slide. When we use the methodology that FEMA has developed and we consider the design of new buildings and new buildings designed to current codes, we find that 20 to 40% of our modern code conforming buildings are unfit or expected to be unfit for occupancy or function for months or longer following a major earthquake. So these studies have been documented with FEMA research. These studies have also been documented with some case studies. We also are finding that 15 to 20% would be expected to be economically unrepairable. And these are buildings designed to current codes, maybe the last 25 years, past Northridge, building codes that implemented the lessons we learned from Loma Prieta and Northridge. Very good with safety, very good about preventing collapse, but buildings are designed to withstand energy by using, dissipating energy by allowing amount of damage that we can control. Much like the crumple zone of your car absorbs energy, you're going to need to repair it afterwards. Buildings absorb energy from earthquakes in a similar way. You would need to repair them for how they absorb that energy. So FEMA and the committee that I worked on to write a report to Congress decided and came up with a recommendation that if we really want to be protecting individuals and our businesses and our communities against the losses that are associated with that damage, we really need to be thoughtful about how we change our building codes, our standards, our construction practices, and even our societal values, like what services do we need when after an earthquake. We all know that people think of buildings as being earthquake proof, that everything's going to be up and running right away. And we need to help educate them as to understanding which ones they need really quickly and which ones can we allow to take some time to recover. Next slide, please. And this is not new to all of you at the Seismic Safety Commission. You all have developed a nice document, your publication 19-01, in which one of the tables, next slide, talks about the expected performance. In addition to the life safety, that column kind of second from the left, we're definitely providing good life safety. Essential buildings, I'll call them risk category 4 buildings, do have a little bit higher protection against collapse because we need those facilities after an earthquake to serve emergency functions. And that does provide them a higher probability of being immediately occupied and functional. But ordinary buildings, most of our bread and butter buildings, our grocery stores, our gas stations, even our pharmacies and some of our non-urgent, non-emergency medical care are not designed to be recovered. They're designed to get people out of their buildings and to protect them from collapse. Next slide, please. So why are we talking about functional recovery? Why are we so focused on this? Well, it is something that we know the public has been expecting and asking for some time now. They know that they're getting safety, but they're thinking they're getting recovery. This is certainly in a focus at many levels of government. FEMA and then federal government are definitely interested in this in terms of how it affects their disaster response plans. They know that natural hazard events across the country cost on an average $100 billion a year in terms of damage and response. They also know that when you think about earthquakes, it's not just a West Coast problem. We actually have about half of the US population across 42 different states that are at risk of a damaging earthquake. So this is important to the federal government, this is important to FEMA and the NEHRP agencies, and it should be important to our local jurisdictions as well. So this desire to reduce our vulnerability, to minimize our losses, to improve our recovery time, then focuses on a few key aspects. Improving our recovery time, the time it takes us to return to some degree of normal. It's not going to be perfect, but some degree of normal. There's still going to be some amount of inconvenience, but we can get things back up and running quicker if we are more thoughtful about our design. We need to think about improving access to what really are considered essential services and resources. The building code right now uses the word essential facilities in a very generic way that often references mostly emergency response or critical communication or critical lifeline infrastructure. But following the pandemic, we've all heard essential be considered a lot more different things. I mentioned earlier, grocery stores, hardware stores to get construction supplies, pharmacies that maybe aren't emergency but are critical. We need to be thinking about how long it's going to take for those things to be up and running. Schools in particular too. Well, we know that once schools are back up and running, it allows parents and families to go back to work. So schools are an important cog of our communities as well. We also know that certainly California has a housing problem and we have a homelessness problem, and the estimates of the scenarios for large seismic events in the Bay Area or Southern California estimate thousands of families being displaced because they can't get back into their homes. So we're looking at multifamily housing and protection of vulnerable populations in those buildings. The idea is to reduce the total cost of ownership to individuals, to businesses, and to communities and the governments in terms of the response to the damage that happens after an earthquake. Next slide, please. So more financials, maybe I'm hammering this too much. Estimated annual losses here in California based on the latest FEMA study in 2023 is something on the order of $10 billion a year on estimated annualized losses for earthquake damage. Our total economic exposure, if you think of a really big earthquake happening at a given time, could be on the order of trillions of dollars. And that would be across the entire state, aggregated across the entire state. So it's not a singular event, but it is across the entire state of what it would take to upgrade some of our existing buildings and think about how to improve the resilience of our communities. Next slide, please. And just for reference, if you wanted to be reminded, next week is our 30th anniversary of Northridge, and we can remember what it was like after the Northridge earthquake, something on the order of $40 billion of damage back in 1994. That almost equates to twice as much in today's dollars. And then you think about that event and you think about how impactful it was to that local area, if not the whole Southern California region. And you think about magnitude 6.7 and how actually isolated the ground shaking was to the Northridge area. And you think about the scenarios for the Southern San Andreas fault rupture, and the damage estimates right now are $200 billion for that. A repeat of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, damage estimates on the order of $150 billion. So this is a serious problem for California, something we all need to be thinking about, ways that we can address this to improve our community resilience. Next slide, please. So the good news is progress is being made. Resources are being available through work at the federal level. I'm going to mention briefly the report to Congress that I helped write, this FEMA PED 2090 report that we did in conjunction with NIST. And then I'm going to talk about the NEHRP provisions that we're working on. Next slide, please. So that report to Congress, I think I got to briefly mention in July, came up with 7 key recommendations. 3 or 4 of them are focused directly on the built environment. The later 3 are actually focused on the human aspect, things like financial planning and pre-disaster recovery planning and education and outreach. But the rest of it is, how do we design our infrastructure? How do we design our new buildings? How do we retrofit existing buildings? How do we handle lifeline infrastructure? The key one that's the cog of the entire wheel is developing this framework for understanding how we're going to address recovery-based design instead of just safety-based design. And that's the progress we're making. Next slide, please. That's the progress we're making with the NEHRP provisions. That recommendation from the report talked about developing this framework for what design criteria could we use to achieve desired recovery times at a specific hazard level. Next slide, please. And so the NEHRP seismic provisions are being funded, the development is being funded by FEMA. This serves as a source document for the standard that gets used in the building code. That standard is called ASCE 7. That gets adopted into the International Building Code, which is the source document for our California Building Code. It's important to remember, though, that all the great resources that FEMA and NEHRP developed contribute to, but cannot control what actually gets adopted into our building codes. The federal government doesn't develop and publish the building codes. That's a private process. It's a consensus process. FEMA and NEHRP and the government can give as much information as they can, but it's up to that process to decide what gets into it. So our FEMA NIST report to Congress talked about making sure that local and state jurisdictions that have high seismic risk or high vulnerability, you should be thinking about using your own powers to develop your own policies to supplement whatever is in the model building code as the bare minimum, so they could be enhanced or tailored to what you need at your local level. And those NEHRP documents, those NEHRP provisions, can be used as source documents for us in California if you want to think about local amendments or maybe some state amendments to the building codes. Next slide, please. So we're doing a lot of good work. If there was more engineers in the room, I'd spend a lot more time on this, and I have a bunch more slides about the actual technical work of how we go about designing for functional recovery. For those of you, I just want to reiterate to those of you who aren't the engineers, we're going to use a lot of the same code provisions, code requirements, code equations. We're just going to use different numbers. So we have different factors of safety to make sure we actually have recovery times, not just prevention of collapse. And then a discussion at the FEMA level about what types of occupancies or what level of seismic hazard might make these provisions mandatory versus voluntary is still happening. We're working on the technical content right now. We're going to allow some of the implementation decisions about mandatory versus voluntary happen through a normal consensus process or back here at the state and local level based on your local conditions. Next slide, please. So real quick, we are going to use the basic building code and then we're going to supplement it. Basic building code right now uses risk categories. You're probably familiar with risk category 4, like I said, for essential or emergency services. We're going to now supplement that with something called a function recovery category. Risk categories provide safety against collapse, varying levels of factors of safety against collapse. Function recovery categories are going to apply different design criteria to achieve different target recovery times. Something on the order of hours, maybe for the highest or best criteria, and then staggering down lower days, weeks, months, as we can allow different occupancies to recover with different frequencies. And those target times are going to be based on when the community needs that service being supported by the building. So instead of thinking of things as a occupancy for assembly or whatever it may be, you're going to start to think about what service does that building provide? Is it public health and safety? Is it healthcare, energy, electricity? And you'll be able to target your time based on when your community needs those services. Next slide, please. So progress being made and now a little bit more relevant to California and how can we start to leverage the work being done at the federal level. The proposals we're working on right now are going to be ready for public comments in about a year, Q1 of 2025. They'll forward it to the ASCE 7 committee, who will then start to think about what they can incorporate in their standard. ASCE 7 then goes through a process to become part of the IBC. This would eventually make it into some form of voluntary, mandatory. The 2030 IBC is currently what it's on target for. That becomes the basis of the 2031 CBC. That doesn't get adopted here in California until 2032, or implemented until 2032. So it's something for us to think about, and I do think it's something for the commission to be thinking about, and other agencies at the state level, of what can we do from the NEHRP provisions in 2025 or 2026 that we might be able to start using earlier, and possibly think about ways we could supplement as early as the 2028 California Building Code. I think it's almost too late for the 2025. That process has started, but we could be thinking about expediting this possibly into 2028 California Building Code. Next slide, please. And that report to Congress from FEMA and NIST did talk about these supplemental actions that the federal government should be taking, but it also said that similar actions should be taken by state and local governments. In particular, I'm going to offer leading by example and mounting an education campaign. I think it's really important for the Seismic Safety Commission to continue your work to educate the public about what we're getting out of our building codes and to educate our local jurisdictions even as to what they could be doing to supplement that if they are seeking higher performance relative to their community's risk and vulnerability. Next slide, please. So what can or should California do? EERI and SEOC last year developed a joint policy agenda. EERI is the Earthquake Engineering Research Institute. These are the experts in the field when it comes to earthquake and seismic safety. Actions needed to reduce California's earthquake risk. This was in response to the devastating earthquakes in Turkey, which has very similar seismicity. We all talked about that even back in July, I think it was. But it's critical for us to do these three things: identify and retrofit our existing vulnerable buildings. I'm talking a lot about new buildings being designed for functional recovery. We can't forget about those existing buildings, particularly those that are built more than 30 years ago. We also need to maintain our programs to make sure our hospital facilities are earthquake ready. You heard me say that regular buildings are going to take months to recover. I know that healthcare is more spread out now. It's not all centralized in just the hospital building, but I'm going to tell you right now, only the hospital is designed for emergency services. Your regular doctor's office, your regular pharmacies aren't going to be up and running as quick as that hospital. So we need to make sure we're thinking about ways to make sure our hospitals are ready to be the centers of healthcare that they need to be. And then lastly, we need to be adopting building codes that help our communities recover. That's what our communities need. That's what our communities want. That's what our state needs long-term to manage the cost of recovery and to be able to predict a little bit better how we're going to be able to respond to the next big earthquake. Now, this is going to take legislative action. This is going to take partnership with different state agencies and commissions, much like yourself. It's going to take a lot of work at the industry side, but we're starting this effort. We've been working on this for a while now, particularly through the Assembly Bill process, and we're eager to continue to reach out and work together with groups like yours. Next slide, please. So again, reiterating, we got about a $10 billion annualized estimated loss for earthquake risk. We have a total economic exposure of 30 trillion. This is a problem that we need to be addressing. Next slide, please. And if I can close with two things for the commission to think about what your role could be to either educate or help to implement, I believe that we should be considering the specific needs of our state. Whatever gets into that model building code at the federal level or the national level, it's probably going to be the bare minimum that the whole country can get around. California is unique. The Western US is unique. We should be thinking about what our state and our communities need in terms of the recovery and in terms of the risk based on the hazard we have here. California's led the way in the past. California's been a leader on green building design, green building best practices, LEED energy efficiency standards, tall wood construction before it was in the regular building codes. We've done it through different mechanisms, through legislature, through executive orders. We may need to empower more state agencies to be able to help more than just the schools and the hospitals that have, some of those agencies have the power, but things about regular old commercial grocery stores and pharmacies. We might need help to get a state agency to think about what other building types need this function recovery consideration. And then lastly, keep doing a great job of supporting and implementing and expanding programs at the local level to retrofit existing buildings. New building works. Well, new buildings will work great for the design we provide, but those existing buildings can't be forgotten about. We need to be thinking about ways to continue to support that too. So with that, hopefully I kept us on time with a little bit of time maybe for some Q&A, and happy to come back in the future when I have more to report too. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for your time. We really appreciate the update. It's such important work and so important for us to realize the difference in building codes being functional or not. So I'll open it up here to comments in the room. Yes.
Sorry, thank you so much for the work. Do appreciate it. So I'm an architect by profession, but I'm a supervisor by circumstance.
Sure.
I was going to say bad luck, but that's probably not true. I'm kind of curious in terms of like the broad brush approach. I mean, I totally understand grocery stores being essential
Yeah.
to a community, pharmacy and whatnot. But from, those occupancies can, a garden store would be the same as the system works today.
Yep.
Are you looking through the code to fine tune what it would be applied to, or is it a broad brush approach applied to all? Because I know also we've done a lot of reach code and we get some flack for that in terms of the increased costs, especially when there's a housing crisis and we're trying to build more units and they're $900,000 a unit and so on and so forth. How would it be narrowed down to really kind of make sure that we're looking at those truly essential if we're going to redefine it that way?
Yeah, no, that's great. It's a great question. And we're working on that right now, actually. So instead of just the regular occupancy classifications, I'll use assembly because I know those, the A1, A2, A3 have different distinguishing tiers there. We would look at like A3 and say, okay, that might be a large assembly building, but do we need that large assembly building for a quick recovery, or can we allow that and based on what it's used for? So if maybe it's a religious use, we might say, okay, that means it has a target recovery time of this. But if it's an emergency shelter or a warehouse that might be stockpiling things for distribution, we would take one layer down and add another layer of categorization within each of those occupancy types. So same thing with business and commercial buildings. Same thing. We would have to understand, are you intending this to be a grocery store use? And sometimes, as you're doing your architectural design, you're just building a cold shell for use for somebody. And we need to start to think about that maybe in an extra layer of planning. We could certainly do the broad brush approach and say, this is good for any use of merchandise or commercial, or we could be very specific that this is very good for pharmacies or grocery stores, or maybe if you want to just do regular clothing retail, you can't swap out a grocery store there later because it's not designed for a quick recovery that a grocery store might need. So we're working through that. And we do have more than just engineers on the committees working on this. We have a lot of planners and social scientists to help us understand. Let's not just paint ourselves into a corner with the easiest, most broad brush approach. We want to try to do our best to customize it. So, yep.
Any other questions in the room? Any questions online? All right, seeing none. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thanks again, everyone.
All right, we are moving well ahead of schedule. So I believe we are on item number 10. We have a couple different items here to speak about, and I will ask Jaw to join me up here as well to talk about a few of our projects. So while we are moving through, we will be speaking about here project updates, which we're still calling it the Ferndale and Turkey Report. At some point, we will get a better name for that. But that report does have 3 components associated with it. We'll be speaking about all of those. Then our fire station inventory report. We'll talk a little bit about our Quake Heroes project, our Shake Table project, and then we will open it up for commission comments. So for our Ferndale Turkey report, the first component of that project is a lessons learned report. That draft is in motion right now. We're hoping to have a final draft for review internally at the end of January, running a little bit behind schedule due to a number of things, including some difficulty in getting all of our interviews lined up, as well as departure of some staff. So we hope to submit it to Cal-OES Legal and our ad hoc committee by the end of January, and we would be bringing it forward for the commission to review and vote to make public in April. Those ad hoc committee members were Representative Nazura and Commissioner De La Cruz. They are for all 3 components, by the way. So the next 2 components is the in-core contract, which we've submitted. These are taking much longer than we anticipated. We're awaiting approval. We're working with Colorado State University and reviewing the T's and C's. There's some issues there. I'm hoping we might get those finalized in the next few days. And then the peer contract has been submitted and is sitting with peer to finalize the scope there. So we are a little farther behind than we anticipated there as well due to contracting issues. We'll move it to the next section in which I'll let Jaw speak to the city selection for the in-core project. And Jaw, if you could just remind everybody what in-core will do and then speak about the city selections, that would be great.
Thank you, Director. As commissioners, you might remember in-core is a computational platform that funded by NIST, and we are leveraging NIST, the federal funding and multidisciplinary team developed this tool to quantify the community recovery after natural disaster. And for our project, we selected 3 with the under advisement with our ad hoc committee members and then also the project team from in-core that we have selected 3 cities, Realdale and East Richmond Heights and Monte Sereno. The 3 cities, if you go to the next slide, then we can see the characteristics of the 3 cities. They are similar in size, similar in population. However, there's the economic profile are significant different. The medium, as you can see from the role of a medium income as an example. So the second city, the second community selected is about almost 3 times of the income of Realdale, and then the Monte Sereno is a lot higher, which hopefully serve as upper bound for our analysis. And the analysis is to study that after the Realdale earthquake, Ferndale earthquake happened, if it happened to the 3 communities, how does the recovery look like for the three communities. And then we're going to study with or without financial assistance. How does it impact the recovery of the city, of the communities? And then the timing of the assistance come at a immediately or a certain time with a delay. So that's the where we have even the contract is falling behind by the city selection, and we're trying to get the data. So those are moving as scheduled. And then I'm happy to also report the Turkey earthquake scenario. If we go to the next slide. This is also under the advisement of the ad hoc committee that we have selected the most impactful and plausible scenarios. So the project, as you might recall, is to study the Turkey-style doublet happens in the urban center in California. What is the impact to our emergency response? And that's the focus of the study. So the first step is have to construct the impactful and plausible science scenario. And this one, if you go to the next slide, the commissioners, you can see those are the two doublet scenario that we have selected. One for Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area, and then one is for the broader LA area. And then so I like to take this opportunity to acknowledge our scientific advisors and contributors. Also, hopefully give the commissioners a sense of the process. How do we get here with the selection? So we, Tim Dawson and his team from the Seismic Hazard Branch under CGS, as well as Philip Matchling and Scott Malagahan and Kevin Milner from SCAC, Southern California Earthquake Center, and David Walt from USGS had advised us on the faults in California. And then Kevin Milner ran the use of ETAPS model to give us the conditional probability of the triggered event after the main shock occurs. And then Kevin also provided the scenario from SCAC's state-of-art 3D simulators, Cybershake. And then Robert Graves, one of the leading geoscientists from USGS behind the simulation for Haywired scenario, is doing the 3D simulation for the two scenarios for us. And then after Robert finished his simulation, David Wald, along with his team, Eric Thompson, Vince Quintiriano from USGS will process data and provide us the shake map form for the peer team to run the engineer analysis level 1. And then Dr. Salem Ganai from peer has been working with Chris and I providing grade points for the simulation by USGS. So at this point, the Northern California scenario has been simulated, and then Rob will go back to the simulation for the Southern California scenario later this month. So we are progress as scheduled. So we are confident to say that the commission has been leveraging the best available science because of the scientific contributors that we have to help us. And then if you go back to the previous slides, please, then we would also like to announce the new partnership that we have on this project. So last time I remember Commissioner Lopez and Representative Nazura asked about lifelines. And then, so we're happy to report that Southern California Edison would like to use our commission's Southern California doublet scenario for their 2024 full-scale exercise. And then our engineering analysis hopefully will inform their ground truth scenario, and also that they can potentially contribute to their lifeline analysis based on their findings using our scenario. And this scenario will be used for their full-scale exercise that Representative Nazura had expressed support before and interest. So we are very excited for this partnership. And also they have a components for fire following earthquake. So this will enrich our report. But then if their funding will be part of our report, depends on the timing when the analysis can be done. And then also that healthcare access and information, as you know, the State Department oversees the design and construction for healthcare facilities statewide. They also had expressed interest that given the information they have collected over the past decades to rate their buildings and then structural components, along with the new AB 1882, that they might be able to inform the commission and the public on this type of scenario happens within the impact area, what kind of relevant hospital services that might be important for the emergency response might or might not be available. So that's the new development I'm happy to report. And if commissioners have questions now or later, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Ja. I just want to point out, Ja read off the list, and it was extensive, of all of the people that have assisted us in getting this information together to be able to determine what the scenarios were and what they look like. I wanted to provide recognition to her and kudos to her because it was a lot of running down people, understanding who we needed to speak to, getting them to agree to assist us. I will tell you that they all were very excited to be part of this project. And she diligently worked to make it come to fruition. So I wanted to express our thankfulness for you doing that. Thank you. And also just wanted to make a point again, how exciting it is that our recognized doublets here are already of interest, even though we haven't published anything yet. So Southern California being willing to and interested in utilizing our designations for the plausible scenarios for their full-size exercise is quite exciting and shows the benefit of what we're doing here and HCI's interest as well. So I will open it up now for comments in the room regarding this particular three-pronged project. All right, no questions in the room. Any questions online?
Not
Yes,
a
Commissioner
question per
Davenport.
se, but just a couple of comments around how tough it was to find a community that was both demographically as well as size-wise similar to Rio Del, recognizing the challenges of deep poverty in such a small and rural community. And so we did a lot of work with our consultants to really try to narrow down a community that would be similar. And the closest that we were able to get is this East Richmond Heights community. And so, you know, Mayor Garnes, I was really thinking about you and trying to stand in those shoes, in your shoes, thinking about how to advocate for, you know, recognition of some of the challenges that Rio Del faced with its particular needs. But I think I do feel really good about the result of this choice, that it does give us an opportunity to do some comparing in a significant way. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that, you know, we also raised in these discussions the importance of continuing to track demographic data over race and ethnicity, because as we know from recent research that the race and ethnicity of communities or of community members is deeply impacted by their ability to be served and to recover with specifically with FEMA benefits. And I understand that that is not a possibility at this stage with this survey. And so just wanted to name that because I think that that does not necessarily get us the kind of deep information that would allow for equitable recovery efforts to be centered in this way with this project. We'll continue to raise those concerns because I do think that it's really critical for us to have a recognition of the differentiated experiences that communities of color, immigrant communities, people who are undocumented continue to face in those challenges to full recovery.
Thank you. And I see that Chair Silva is back. Welcome, Chair Silva.
Thank you so much. Where are we?
We are about to continue our discussion on agenda item 10 for the fire station inventory project.
Thank you very much.
Right, so I will continue with information about this next project, which is our fire station inventory project. Our survey draft was approved with our subcommittee group, which consisted of Commissioner Wells and Representative Gould. We also vetted the survey with OES Fire and Rescue, also with CAL FIRE, and the survey is currently being tested with a small group of fire stations. Assuming that survey testing goes well, we intend to have full distribution of the survey by end of January. And then we will have a few months of collecting that data and then doing initial analysis and mapping and the individual HAZUS runs of the estimated risk for those surveys. And those will be going on as we receive the surveys. The goal is to have a final report and update of the FEMA HAZUS data by early summer. The project is scheduled to complete in July of 2024, and we will, of course, work with our partner groups to develop recommendations in an action plan. Next slide, please. We have here just a little information, visual information on what that fire station inventory survey looks like. It is an electronic survey. There was a lot of work done here by Chris Lozano. He's sitting over there in the corner. He probably doesn't want me pointing him out, but there he is. Thank you, Chris, for all of your work there. Learning Survey 123, which he didn't have knowledge about, and ArcGIS. So he's done tremendous work on the back end there, learning how to utilize those assets. The survey themselves asks specific questions, primarily about the structure and the use of those buildings. And so you'll just see there what that looks like. Next slide, please. So we are now moving on to the Northridge Anniversary Quake Heroes project that we received approval for. The SOW was completed in December, but we are still working with OES contract to work through the details of that. And just as a note, the non-competitive bid could potentially take up to 6 months for approval. I'm hoping that won't be the case, but it could, and then planned to begin once the contract is approved. As a note, this film does not go out of usefulness at the end of this year. It is about the Northridge earthquake. However, it is all about how to recover and be resilient and what resources you should be looking to use to make yourselves more resilient for future. So this project will likely move into 2025 if we don't get approval for the contract within 6 months. Next slide, please. And then we have our shake table project. That shake table project was amended for the added UAV, which is essentially a drone as part of the project, and the task for enhanced research data, including an inspection protocol manual. The shake table test, which as a reminder is for mid-rise cold form steel buildings and is a shake table test and will include fire following tests for earthquake resiliency as well, and is expected to end by the end of this summer. It may begin as early as very late fall. Next slide, please. So that is the end of all of our project updates. Commissioner Chair Silva.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions about the 4 projects that our executive director walked us through? I don't see any hands raised on Zoom. I'm still in a little tiny box with 7 of you. Are any of you at the in the commission hearing room needing to make a comment? If not, we will move on to the next item, which is miscellaneous announcements.
Seeing no comments in the room. Oh, wait, I see Commissioner Lopez has her hand up.
Yes, I have 2 items I want to share with the group. One, just really want to thank Andy and Ja and all the staff at the commission, because through their hard work and the partnership with FEMA, as you recall, I've talked about the task force we convened to provide some recommendations on the modifications of the hazard mitigation grant that FEMA administers. And this is right in line with what Commissioner De La Cruz said earlier, which is especially for the vulnerable population, the hazard mitigation fund is very onerous, and the benefit cost analysis model makes projects that really need the funding the most actually ineligible. So we worked together to provide some recommendation to modify some of the input, not to change the model itself. And it was a lot of great work, and we came up with some good recommendation. And I'm happy to report that the National Advisory Council has adopted those. So we're really keeping our fingers crossed that FEMA actually adopts those recommendations, which will have a national impact on potentially the accessibility and the eligibility of project for the hazard mitigation grant. So we're keeping a close eye on that. The second thing that I wanted to share is we were successful in getting our agency $10.3 million in FEMA funding for a relocation of a sewer line. And that's part of the hazard mitigation and all the efforts that go into, again, being ready for seismic. We are going to have a press conference. I know a lot of you are far, but I wanted to invite the commission staff, Andy, and anyone else who's available, or any elected officials or any commissioners that are interested. And the reason why I think it makes sense is to really highlight the importance of these funds for our communities and really trying to find ways to release these fundings more and sooner, because these things do take quite a bit of time. And I think a lot of communities like Rio Del and others could really use additional funding and timeliness of those funding being released. So that's January 25th. I know it's right around the corner, but we were really waiting on FEMA because they're going to come out. And we have Deputy Administrator Salinas, who's been very much a champion. She's coming out, and she's also been very supportive of our funding for the BRIC grant. And so there's a lot of great momentum. Unfortunately, the devastation that Chair Silva shared is something that we're using to really raise awareness, and moments like this can bring some of the success as well as the further work that we need to do. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Executive Director, did you have some miscellaneous announcements?
I do, thank you. Next slide, please. So I have a number of miscellaneous announcements. We'll do a quick legislative update, speak about the California Building Standards Commission's appointment, remind everybody about the chair and vice chair election that will be coming up at the next meeting, speak about Northridge anniversary activities, talk a little bit about our YouTube channel, EBB registration, and provide a thank you. Next slide, please. For a legislative update, there were a couple different bills that we were following, several of them that were chaptered and several that went into the inactive folder. So the first one was a chaptered bill. It basically recast the exemption for exempt projects for the alteration of any structure for human occupancy if the value of the alteration does not exceed 50% of the appraised value. The second, AB 1505, was ordered to the inactive file. 1770 was also moved to inactive file. We all know, because 7 of us are here in the room, that the Bagley-Keene meeting was chaptered. And the last one for AB 1471 was also chaptered, and it specifically extended the deadline for that particular hospital for compliance. And that's the end of the legislative update. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the California Building Standards Commission Structural Design Lateral Forces Code Advisory Committee invited Ja to their committee, and she was appointed to that committee with a 3-year term covering 2 adoption cycles. So congratulations, Ja. That was effective December 14th and really speaks to how the community views her and her expertise. Next slide, please. This is a reminder that the election of the chair and vice chair is coming to you very soon. At our next meeting, we will be voting. Shortly after our meeting here, you will be receiving the statement of qualifications for you to review. And if you're interested in that chair or vice chair position, that form must be submitted back to me by March 15th. I will tell you I did cut that form down. So instead of having 10 questions, you now have 5. So it should be a little easier to answer that form if you're interested. We will be voting at the April 11th meeting at the very end of the meeting so that the new chair or vice chair will take their position at the end of the meeting. And that is it about elections. Next, please. So as we mentioned at the very top of the meeting, the 30th anniversary of the Northridge earthquake is January 17th. There's a couple activities that we know about. The Northridge 30th Symposium at Caltech, which is sponsored by the Structural Engineers Association of Southern California. And if you're interested in that, there's some very interesting speakers. There is the website to get information about how to register. We also will be highlighting here the California Specialized Training Institute, what we call CSTI. They're doing a mobilization exercise, or MOBEX as they call it. It's a combined agency exercise with the California Regional Search and Rescue and Regional Rescue Task Forces at the National Disaster Search Dog Foundation property in Santa Paula, California. And as they are known and available, the Earthquake Country Alliance Welcome to Earthquake Country website will have additional items of recognition for the Northridge. Right now, there isn't anything on there, but if anything comes up, they will publish it there. Next is our new YouTube channel. So we have a YouTube channel for those of you who are interested in going back and watching our previous commission meetings. They are now, at least for 2023, available online for viewing. We will be adding 2022 and 2021 as well. It takes a little time to get these uploaded, but we do have that available, and it will be linked to our website. Next slide, please. Also would like to mention that the Earthquake Brace Bolt program, as you all know, fond place in my heart for that program. Registration opened yesterday. It is open for 30 days. This is a grant program to seismically retrofit single-family residences with raised foundations. They now have completed over 23,000 retrofits, and with the opening of this registration, they're now in 815 zip codes. If you're interested in that or spreading the news, you can find more information at earthquakebracebolt.com. Next slide, please. And lastly, I'd like to take a moment to thank Selena. She was an invaluable member of our commission for almost 9 years, and her dedication to the success and ongoing operations was evident during her tenure, including the time that she was acting director. And she provided a lot of support to me when I first came on board. So I will miss her. I appreciated her professionalism and expertise. And we wish her nothing but the best in her new appointment. And I believe that is the end of my miscellaneous report.
Any questions about what our executive director has covered? Clearly, our staff and our commission has been doing a lot of work. And thank you for the update, Commissioner Kim Lopez. Any questions or comments from commissioners?
I have a question. Can she see me?
Commissioner Garnes does.
I was just wondering, is anyone going to take Selena's place?
Well, I don't know if anybody can take her place, but yes. Yes, we will be filling her position. We have it in with HR right now, and are just waiting for approval to advertise for the position. Thank you for the question.
Other questions, comments? Going once, going twice. Next item is public comment for items not on the agenda. This is an opportunity for members of the public to give us input on items that are related to what we do but are not on our agenda for today. You have up to 2 minutes, both if you are joining us in person in Mather or whether you are joining us remotely through our Zoom feed. Is there anyone in the room that wishes to speak to us on items not on the agenda? Tanya, is there anyone who is standing up, waving their hands in the room?
None at this time, and I don't see any virtually.
I agree. I don't see anyone virtually either. So I will close this item and thank everyone for their input when we do receive it. And we are now at a point of adjournment. First of all, thank you all for being with us today. We almost everybody was here, and the one person who wasn't, Commissioner Miyamoto, is doing yeoman's work on our behalf in Japan. I would like to remind you all that Thursday, April 11th is our next meeting, and we will be voting again on chair and vice chair for the coming year. And we will also be hearing the reports from California State University's system and from the UC system on how they work in the seismic arena in California. And with that, thank you all again, and I am adjourning this meeting.